Hey everybody, it's Tony Cottaspati from GreatVocalMajority.com, and today I'm put together a little slide presentation for you uh, about a problem I think that never gets talked about, but it really should be talked about almost continually because it's a really serious problem, and that's this incestuous relationship between the media and politics. I think a lot of people really understand that there is that problem and that it does exist, but I don't think people really understand the extent to which it exists. And that's what this presentation is really going to demonstrate. And I put one chart together who I think is the poster boy for this kind of incestuous relationship. And that's this guy, George Stephanopoulos. Now, if you're under 25 years old, you may not be old enough to remember that George Stephanopoulos was the press secretary for President Clinton in his first term. And George Stephanopoulos is tied to the Clintons at the hip. And if you go back and look at the way Stephanopoulos has conducted himself over time, you will see that he has revealed his bias and the fact that he is an insider. If you remember, during the Republican debate in the primary season, Stephanopoulos asked Mitt Romney a question about making birth control devices illegal. And Romney didn't know where that question was coming from. It just shocked him, and he was like, "What are you even talking about? Nobody's even suggesting that." It was completely out of left field, or so everyone thought, until about 2 weeks later, interestingly enough, the Democratic Party launched a propaganda campaign to say that the Republicans were conducting a war on women. And it dovetailed directly into the line of questioning from George Stephanopoulos in that debate. But that wasn't the only time that Stephanopoulos has revealed his biases in the way he questions. He's always more aggressive with the Republican and less aggressive and even amiable with the Democrat. If you remember, there was an interview with President Obama where President Obama mentioned something about, it was a slip of the tongue. He mentioned, John McCain has not questioned my Muslim faith, is what Obama said. And rather than leave it, as most reporters would do, most journalists would do, he interjected and made sure that it was corrected for Obama. You never see reporters do that. I mean, obviously, I'm not questioning here whether Obama really is a Muslim or not. I'm not even questioning that. All I'm really saying here is that when President Obama said my Muslim faith, it's not the job of the reporter to correct that. He may point it out. He would say, Senator Obama, you didn't say, you said my Muslim faith. Is that what you meant? I mean, that's what he should have done. He didn't. Instead, he went and actually corrected what Obama said for him. That's not the job of a reporter. So that's another thing that reflected bias. I mean, I could go through a lot of examples. I'm not going to go through any with Stephanopoulos. I think he's so in the soup with the Democrats, it's not funny. I mean, his show is not worth watching when he's on it, in my opinion. But let's go through some of these relationships because I don't think you're going to really believe some of them. So here's the first one. Ben Rhodes is President Obama's national security advisor. He is the brother of the president of CBS News, David Rhodes. These guys are brothers. CBS News, the man who calls the shots at CBS News, is the brother of the national security advisor for Obama. Doesn't that make you wonder how CBS chooses the news stories to cover? I mean, Doesn't it make you now second guess why they didn't cover the IRS scandal the way they really should have, and why they didn't cover Benghazi except for the reporting of Cheryl Atkinson, which, by the way, she was pushed out of CBS after being there for 20 years and winning all kinds of awards for her investigative reporting. But then she gets pushed out. Just so happens when she gets pushed out when the brother of the National Security Advisor is her boss. I mean, doesn't that reek to high heaven? What about their coverage of Obamacare or their coverage of immigration? I mean, this is so obvious that it's not necessarily, remember here, professional journalistic ethic code says to avoid all conflicts, real or perceived. This is a real conflict, not just a perceived one. And there it is, right out there for you to see. But did you know about it? You may have, if you are conservative and you are familiar with conservative publications or conservative media. However, if you're somebody that listens to the mainstream media all the time or watches MSNBC or the major networks, you would never have heard this. This is only the beginning. What about Susan Rice? Susan Rice is the National Security Advisor for Obama. Her husband is the executive producer of This Week with George Stephanopoulos. That's our husband. And then you have George Stephanopoulos running the show. I mean, it begs the same questions that it begged with CBS for ABC. That's her husband. I mean, when he goes home at night, suppose his news organization really hammers the president's administration on some issue, as they're supposed to, by the way, because they're supposed to be an adversarial media. Do you think he gets grief when he goes home or not? I mean, please, this is so inappropriate. It is so corrupt, and it gets worse. Jay Carney, he's the former presidential spokesliar. He's married to Claire Shipman, who's a correspondent for ABC News. So now think about this. We have Shipman, we have Stephanopoulos, and we got the executive producer guy for This Week. And they're all married to administration officials. Big shots, guys that are important, not like somebody sitting at a desk in a corner, cubicle somewhere. Then you have Peter Orszag. Peter Orszag was only Obama's OMB director. The OMB director when he was running $1.5 trillion deficits the first 4 or 5 years. Well, who's his wife? His wife is a co-anchor on Good Morning America on weekends, again on ABC. I mean, how much reporting did Biana Golodryga, whatever her name is, what kind of really in-depth, penetrating reporting would you expect out of ABC after you see all these relationships? Then you have Elizabeth Sherwood Randall. Okay, she's not a very widely known person in the administration, but she was Obama's energy advisor, and she was a former advisor to Joe Biden, so she's very tightly locked in to Democratic Party politics with the president and the vice president. Who's her husband? Or excuse me, her brother? Her brother's Ben Sherwood. All he is the former president of ABC News, and now an even bigger job, the president of ABC Disney overall. So that means there's influence from family members in the administration into ABC all up and down the line. Gets better. Here's a deputy secretary of state. Of course, the secretary of state wasn't a big job, right? I mean, Hillary Clinton only ended up screwing up the world. But her deputy secretary of state is a guy named Tom Needis. Tom Needis' wife is Virginia Mosley. And all she is the deputy bureau chief of CNN in Washington, D.C. So you don't see a lot of really negative stories about Hillary Clinton on CNN. Gee, I wonder why. You know, I wonder why. I mean, think about this. Virginia Mosley has a husband who's the Deputy Secretary of State, and she's at CNN. Do you think or don't you think that the husband's going to say, go easy on Hillary. Come on already. You don't think that's going to happen? These are human beings we're talking about, not robots. Although maybe there's a question there. Let's continue. Okay, here's a couple of small fries, but still. Katie Hogan is Obama's deputy press secretary. She was also, for 2012, the Obama for America spokesperson. Her husband is a correspondent in ABC News. So what do you think is going to happen when Matt Jaffe goes to do a report on some scandal at the Obama White House? What do you think is going to happen when his wife, the press secretary, deputy press secretary, has to say, you don't think she gets pressure from the White House? Hey, tell your husband to watch what he says about the Obama administration. Your job isn't a permanent one. Remember that. I mean, these kind of things do go on. These are people. These are politics. This is a power game. And look at the incestuous relationship here between the people in power and the people who are supposed to be holding them accountable. And now we get into some fun stuff. This is Chuck Todd on NBC News. I'm using quotation marks with my fingers. His old boss, and I think most people don't know this, his old boss was Senator Tom Harkin, a Democrat from Iowa. Now, when he was in the Senate, this was, predates Obama, he was the most liberal senator. That was his rating. He was rated as the most, that was when Ted Kennedy was there. So he made Ted Kennedy, look like Joseph Stalin or something. So there you go. Chuck Todd. Now, when Chuck Todd does his show on Meet the Press, do you think he talks about things that might reflect poorly on Senator Harkin? I doubt it. I mean, when was the last time you ever heard Meet the Press doing a show on ethanol subsidies and the way Tom Harkin lobbied for those for Iowa farmers? Probably not very much, right? Why is a guy like Chuck Todd even in that position? Shouldn't Meet the Press be headed by somebody who has no ties to political figures? I mean, he was on his staff. That means to be on the staff of a senator means you've got to have deep ties in the Democratic Party. You can't just be anybody. What do you think? They hire somebody, oh, this guy has a good degree, he made his magna cum laude in accounting. No, you got to be in the party. And then this is my favorite one, Chris Matthews. Chris Matthews is such a liar. I mean, and he hides his past. I mean, everybody knows that he was a speechwriter for Jimmy Carter, and that he was the author of the famous speech that pretty much did Carter in, where it was the speech where it was called the Crisis of Confidence speech. That was the speech where Jimmy Carter basically blamed everyone in the country for the problems that the country was having. Not Jimmy Carter. No, he wasn't at fault. Does this sound familiar? I mean, it sounds like the kind of president we have now, right? And that's why Chris Matthews has such a bromance with Obama. Jimmy Carter was the boss of Chris Matthews, and I don't have anything else to say about that except that just speaks for itself. But that wasn't the only person that Chris Matthews worked for. He also worked for the former House Speaker Tip O'Neill. Now, for you youngsters out there, Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House when Reagan was president. Did you know that during Reagan's presidency, there were 7 government shutdowns? And do you know that that man that you see on the left there, this guy, Chris Matthews, helped Tip O'Neill engineer those 7 government shutdowns? And I want to know, if you happen to watch MSNBC, has Chris Matthews ever talked about how he helped Tip O'Neill engineer those shutdowns? You see, I don't watch that media, so I'm not really sure if he ever did say anything. But I would really doubt it. I would really doubt it, because these people are thoroughly dishonest. They never reveal their past affiliations unless they're unavoidable, like the one with being the speechwriter for Jimmy Carter. Now, I'm going to talk about what you can do about these skunks in the media who are so corrupt and biased. What can you do about it? Well, the first thing you could do is you can let them know what you know. Let them know. I know that you were helping engineer shutdowns with Tip O'Neill, Mr. Matthews. So, you better fly straight. Something like that. Hold them to their journalistic standards of fairness. The only standard you have to hold them to is avoid all conflicts, real or perceived. They're not doing that. And if they don't adhere to those standards, just tune them out and boycott them when they fail. Call their advertisers. Let them know. I'm not going to buy your product because you endorse this guy on TV and he is not telling me news. He's telling me what he's telling me what he wants me to believe. Demand unaffiliated reporters from the networks. When CBS has Ben Rhodes' brother, Dave Rhodes, running the news operation, he shouldn't be there. He should not be there. As long as Ben Rhodes is national security advisor working in the government, he should not be in that job. Give him another job somewhere else where he can't influence what is shown as the news every single day. That's the problem with this. These people are not just, they're on air or they're influencing what goes on air. And let them know that this is inherent bias and it is totally unacceptable. Look, this is the kind of thing that ruins countries. We got to stop this stuff. We can stop it. What we have to do is let them know that we will not accept it. Now, that's pretty much what I had to say about this. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you got some information that you didn't already have. Come to my website, greatvocalmajority.com. I have about 28 or 29 different podcasts there. I try to give information on things that are topical, but when I go back and look, some of those things that I did, in fact, many of them, are still relevant and still worth listening to. So take a look at the website, and I'm still building it, and I'm putting a lot of work in trying to get it, really looking good and good for information. My goal is to bring information to people that they're not getting. And, I do everything. It's all free. The only thing on the website that I have are affiliates, like with Amazon and Google AdSense. I don't really make any money doing this, but it's if I had the traffic, maybe I would be able to generate some. But it's really there because I love giving out the information and I really enjoy doing it for you guys. I just hope that you act on it. That's the whole point of the Great Vocal Majority. I want to activate people to educate, and when I educate them, I want to activate them. I want to motivate them to go to their political leaders, to go to the media people, and let them know we want better. That's it for me. Thanks for listening. Take care now, guys.